Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to the Black Robe podcast. It's a party on today's episode. I'm here with my lovely co-host, Miss Carol Mitchell. How are you feeling today?
I have been so emotional because we are recording the show on April 20th. And
Mm-hmm.
April 20th is not just National Weed Day,
420.
it's Weed Day. So, no,
Shout
I'm
out
not
to all
smoking
the
anything now.
black retail stores, cannabis stores out there making a buck today.
It's National Weed Day, but more important than that, the verdict in the Derek Chauvin trial came forward from the jury. And on
You,
all three counts, he was found guilty.
man,
Uh,
I wish I had my gavel. This would have been
yes,
the moment. Emotions were high. Emotions were high. I was discouraged before the verdict. I was just kind of emotionally trying to prepare myself. I made a quick little story on my Facebook, just trying to, encourage people to just continue to have faith, hug your family. But then I was elated. I was excited, because yes, we got justice for George Floyd. And no, this isn't justice for all, right? But all the people, it really took America, like the people of color in America, and even our white allies, everyone coming together to make this happen. No way were they gonna. I just now that it's happened, I'm like, no way were they gonna not find him guilty. What do you think, Carol?
it was an emotional couple of weeks, two and a
Mm-hmm.
half, however many weeks. And I watched a lot of the trial and tweeted out my little snippy remarks along the way. Um, Fussed at the television set, argued with the pathologists and the forensic pathologists and some of the experts and said, no, that's not right, even though what do I know?
The attorney in you, of course.
I'm not a toxicologist, I'm not a cardiologist, but I feel like I learned some things through this trial.
Mm,
Dr. Tobin is a rock star now, but I think the point that a lot of the commentators and those who've spoke on it are making is that this is just the beginning in Minnesota. They now
mhm.
have Dante Wright's case
Yeah.
looming, Adam Toledo over in Chicago, that case looming, Marvin Scott down in Texas.
Manny
So
Ellis in
Manny Ellis's
Washington,
case here is still not resolved.
Tacoma. Mhm.
Right, Tacoma has its own issue. The irony is that some of those other cases, people have already been fired, charged, prosecuted now with Derek Chauvin, the two other officers involved with George Floyd. Their cases are coming up this summer, and we still don't even have an answer with Manny. So that's
Come
disturbing
on,
locally
Washington.
and traumatic. And the one thing I would say also is be aware of the fact that this has been a very traumatic experience, especially for Black folk. I think lots of other people feel that pain also who have lost relatives to police violence, but it's
Hmm.
particularly difficult. I've been very emotional about it this last couple of weeks because we've had a couple of bloody weeks
Yeah.
with young men, young African American, Black men, African descent men being killed.
Hmm.
So we still have work to do. Policy is part of it. And our guests tonight, the work that they're doing here in Tacoma, that's part of the solution also. We're going to welcome our guests in. Marcus Rogers is here and Corwin Scott from Project Peace. So we're going to just bring them on and get the
Yeah.
conversation started. How's that sound?
Good.
Bring them in. Bring
Bring them
them in.
in. There they are.
Let's grow the party. Hey there,
Hi,
Corwin.
Corwin.
Evening, good evening.
Good
All right.
evening.
Hey there, Marcus. Well, welcome
Hello.
you guys both to the Black Robe podcast. This is not Corwin's first time, but Marcus, I want to let you know that this is a Black space. Okay, we call this the Black Robe podcast because we, as Black members of the community, we're putting on the justice robes here, and we're saying what is just from our perspective. So full disclaimer, be transparent. It is a safe
Okay.
space.
All right. Sounds
Awesome.
good. Thank you. Thank
Yeah,
you
thank
very
you.
Of
So
much.
course.
maybe we
Happy to
should
be here.
start with Marcus and Corwin. If the two of you would like to just maybe spend a minute introducing yourselves and telling us how you became associated with Project Peace. Start there. You want to start, Corwin? Why don't you
Yeah.
start? And then Marcus, yeah, tell us a little bit about who you are and how you became associated with Project Peace.
Okay. Well, again, thank you for having us. My name is Corwin Scott. I am a lifelong Tacoma resident. I'm also the executive director of the Evergreen Empowerment Group. I came to Project Peace in summer of 2019. I was invited by one of the other members, Mona Baghdadi, who is also a phenomenal member. And there I met some other folks, Mina and some other folks. It's just been great. And I also met Marcus. And love the work that Project Peace has done and what they are currently doing and what we are going to do in the future.
We're going to hear about that, right, Marcus? You'll tell us a little bit more about that in just
Absolutely.
a few minutes. But tell us who you are and how you got to Project Peace.
Okay. Well, thanks for having me. My name is Marcus Rogers, and I've been in Tacoma for quite a while and have raised two sons in the area through the school system, and just have always kind of been somewhat involved in community programs and things that kind of helped us to move the dial for us as African Americans. But in reference to Project Peace, I think my son was a junior in high school, so it must have been about 2017 that I got invited to the group through Hermina Jackson, who's still a part of the group and has done a phenomenal job. And it just seemed to be a really good fit for me and what I felt like I needed from my sons. I've tried to show them that there are some good spaces that they can hover in when it comes to law enforcement and trust, but they kind of have to see me doing it as well. So by default, it's kind of been something that's really worked out. And my youngest son was one of the youth leaders for quite a while. And it's been a good, very good experience and a good decision by me to join.
Well, I
Definitely.
know that a lot of people may know or think of Project Peace from its earlier days, 2015, roughly, when it first came about. And I think the stats that I saw were roughly 800 people were involved over a period of time in some early dialogues. And there were these three major areas of focus: youth engagement, diverse communities, and professionalism. And so that's sort of the history. But what are you really focused on now? And why do we need a Project Peace today as opposed to in 2015?
Well, I think that the core of Project Peace is to build a bridge between the community and the Tacoma Police Department. And that's something that Project Peace has tried to do over the last 6 years. What we are currently doing is working on that exact same thing. We are working now on a reconciliation project that the city of Tacoma is spearheading. And that is going to bring in more of the folks in the community and more of the law enforcement community to really come together and come to, a reconciliation about all that has happened, but also to heal and to move forward together as a community.
Do you want to
Yeah.
add anything to that, Marcus? As you talk about reconciliation, we're taping this show on the same day that the verdict in the Derek Chauvin trial came down,
Yeah,
the murder of George Floyd. Some people would say was somehow vindicated. Floyd was vindicated. We got justice there. But reconciliation is a whole other thing, right? What happened in the courtroom may have been step one. So what do you mean by reconciliation, and how would that actually work? What are you doing to actually make that happen?
Well, I think just to kind of echo a little bit of Corin, the whole idea of bringing the community to a safe space, similar to what you guys have created here, was really the end goal. It was what they really wanted to happen. And before I moved to that just to kind of go back about that 800 something people, there was much more than 3 pillars. There was like 11. And we narrowed it down to things that we could really get accomplished. There's a lot of things that were on the list. So we as Project Peace has come to the conclusion, in order for us to really grow, it really made more sense for us to really concentrate on teenagers who very soon are going to be the same young adults that we really need to really move the dial. Not to say that, an older generation, be they 30, 40, 50, whatever, cannot, but to do it in a way that's going to be probably most effective, we really need the pressure from the younger generation to kind of want to step up and do the things that that may not always feel like it's so fun to do, but it makes a difference. So this group that the city has partnered with on this reconciliation piece, I'm excited about learning a lot. They're going to be helping us to understand how we can be better in our community based off of things that they've done in a lot of other places around the country. So it is an exciting place to be. And it's coming from a perspective from everyone who understands it, but don't potentially really know how to get there. That helps.
Anzhane, what you think about, Anzhane and I were very intentional when we set this space up, that we wanted this intergenerational dialogue. She's a 20 something and I'm a something.
30.
30 something.
And 30 more. And so what do you think about this focus on youth, young adults as a focus of Project Peace, at least part of what they're doing right now?
Yeah, I mean, I think that is the right target audience, really, just as you mentioned, Marcus, because we are the upcoming leaders. I mean, the ones that are going to, really be controlling the society, social society, right? And so it is important that our voices, are heard. I was just talking to someone online today, he's young man, is very vocal about what's going on, and I just pose a question, well, hey, what are you doing about it? There's a lot of young people that got something to say, and there is a lot of distrust, right? People know it, but then it's like, are you just gonna sit in that distrust? What are we gonna do to mend this relationship, to fix this? We have to do something. We can't just keep just talking, just complaining about the issue. We know there's issues, right? So I mean, and the young people, we are engaged. Like, we do have something to say. I love how that is definitely your your target audience. That's who the IBJ, we consider ourselves to really be social justice advocates, right? And so we have our Freedom Summer Symposium coming up this summer to, help leaders, help the 18 to 35 demographic really step into that role of leadership. Just step up and have some value in their voice or their idea, right? So I would say IBJ and Project Peace, we align on that front for sure. Now, reconciliation, that is going to be a tough task. And it's hard to build trust, but building relationships, I guess that's the first way. So I want to ask you guys, how has that been? Are the law enforcement, do they really want to be a part of, building this community? Have you seen positive? Because when young people see police, it's never in a positive way, especially if you're of color, and maybe never is a harsh word, but it's rarely, it comes in time of enforcement, not really in time of community. When I was a kid, and I'm from Seattle, King County, I always bring up Officer Cookie, because she was around just coming to the community centers late night or after school program, passing out little name tags. And obviously 20-year-olds don't care about stickers, but what are you doing that's in a positive, not just coming to enforce the law, right? How are we building relationships? So have you guys seen that sort of response from law enforcement?
Well, that we actually, the The Project Peace Executive Committee actually has two liaisons from the Tacoma Police Department. One is Assistant Chief Ed Wade, and the other one is Captain Sean Stringer. And so we meet with them at least once a month to go over different things and also ideas. And there are some times that, you know, we get frustrated, and they sometimes get some of the backlash from some of that frustration. So, but it's also good to have them at their perspective and say, okay, I can see where you are coming from. And since they're both in positions of leadership, the words that we say to them can echo to the people that they are over. And we hope that they're getting the message, but they also have some, you know, some open insights as well as the things that changed and helped. So continually to keep that partnership going, I think, is paramount. And it would be nice to get more of the Tacoma police on board as well.
What happens though, Marcus and Corwin, what happens? You're trying to create trust and start this reconciliation process. And if I think about truth and reconciliation on an international scale, for example, in South Africa after apartheid, the first step is acknowledging what you did wrong and that there was harm that happened.
Right.
How do you get people to do that? And then you see, you've got the Manny Ellis case still unresolved. We were just talking about that in our intro. You got the street racing incident where people were hurt by cars driving through.
The newspaper carrier.
You got the newspaper carrier incident. So as you try to do your work, Project Peace tries to do its work, you have these incidents happening in the middle of it. Sort of as soon as you heal something that's been damaged, before the scab can grow over it, somebody has scraped it back off again. What's your remedy for that? How are you working through that?
Well, if I think to kind of really start, I think it's fair for you guys and the listeners to go back and take a step and share with you what has happened and how we approached this when we began to do these youth dialogues. And that approach was to empower a handful of youth that could go in and lead these dialogues and allow the adults in the room to take a step back and truly give them full power to have what would be real conversations and dialogue with law enforcement in a way where they're not intimidated by what an officer may think about their opinion of officers. So what it really was about was, I hate to say that we need to also trust police, but it is the truth. We have done everything we can to trust law enforcement, and there's been a smack in the face around every corner. But unfortunately, you still need them. So to Project Peace's credit, I think focusing on teenagers that are going to quickly become the next Anzhane slaughters, okay, was the most important thing to do. And at the same time, creating that space that was a safe space for them to be able to speak up. And what happened from quite a few of those dialogues, not every last one of them, but there were several incidents where police are finally hearing the truth of students and how they feel about their presence, their support, their positions, just everything that those kids could potentially muster up the confidence to say. They began to hear it as officers, and many officers was apologizing. We have officers crying because they didn't really understand how they were being viewed, because they have such an authority that they had never had to really take a step back and truly listen to how people think about them in a space where they don't get to judge the opinion. They have to just hear it. So I think that in itself really did a great job for a lot of those young adults that was in those meetings because they wanted more. So anytime that somebody wants some more, that mean is
Think
working. So when you got students that are looking forward to it to happen again, and you have officers that are hoping to come back and do it again, we got to a point almost it's like, well, we glad that you here, officer such and such. Bring some new people. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Because we like the fact that you get it, but the school resource officer don't need to understand how to deal with students. He's in the building every day. It's the officers who don't deal with people on one-on-one basis like that on a regular basis that we were trying to get in. And I think I really believe that it moved the dial. Maybe not in a policy way, but in a personal way for people. I think it moved the dial personally for officers and quite a few teenagers, at the same time. And then that confidence that a lot of them got from watching other teenagers lead these dialogues, because it was a fishbowl type of scenario where we would put all the officers in the middle of the room and the kids asked all the questions and the adults had to be quiet, so I think that many of them understood that the things that they were thinking were relevant, it wasn't unjust, and that some officers wanted to be different. And because of that, we did move the dial. And that is part of reconciliation. That's a part of how you get there. So
You want
that's
to
the
add some? Thank you, Marcus. You want to add anything to that, Corwin?
I definitely want to say that reconciliation, Carol, like you said, has to do with one side acknowledging the harms that they have caused. And then from that point on, the other folks being able to accept from the other party that they have admitted to what they've done. And then from there, now how can we come to a place where we can at least get along and have some type of a cordial relationship?
There is this element of a power differential, obviously, between young adults and adults. So that's one level of power difference. And if you were like, I'm sure the three of us, and probably Anjanae too, if I know her mama, we were raised to have deference for officials like police, like adults, right? We're raised that way. And I think there's been some erosion of that. And the imagery that young people are seeing, like that we are all seeing, like Dante Wright and Adam Toledo being killed, that makes it pretty difficult to have the officer cookie kind of interaction. So I'm wondering, what else then are you recommending? What's Project Peace doing beyond the young adult dialogues? What's the next step in your plan?
Well, the next step is to reach the mother and fathers of these young. I mean, if you grew up on the hilltop or the east side during the 80s, then you know that there was a lot of gang activity and there was a lot of drug activity. Now, with both also came a lot of a lot of law enforcement presence in that areas. And in some cases, some of the people were unfairly targeted because of their address.
Mm-hmm.
So we were talking about the same thing last year. That is great that Johnny goes to school and he meets Officer Bob, and Officer Bob is a great guy. But as soon as Johnny goes home and tells his parents about what a great day he had, well, they tell stories about, well, when Bob was on the street back in '92.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. So you have to get engaged with the people that also were harmed, and they actually may have had direct interactions with some of these folks. So that's what the new plan is to reach out to the older folks who were affected by law enforcement during the 80s and in the 90s. And one of the things that we are going to be working on is our interviews, where we get folks on camera to tell their stories. But it's just going to go beyond the fact that you tell your story on camera and then we put it in vault. These stories are going to be they're going to be presented. That way, so that way their stories are told, and they feel like they have once, have been heard, and then now we can try to move on after that. I know there are a number of folks who have made complaints over the years, and they never heard anything back about what happened with the officers involved, and there was really no ending to it. So we want to come to a place where folks are able to tell their stories, come to a conclusion about what may have happened to the officers that were involved, and then to move on.
I think to kind of piggyback a little bit on, the whole idea of trying to help people to get it off their chest, so to speak. Looking at how many people showed up at some of these forums that was held, this would potentially be prior to a lot of the youth engagement, that speaking again to those 800 some people, there are so many people who had a personal axe to grind. And the things that was going on that brought them to the community center was not about a personal vendetta. So a lot of people have not been able to get some of the answers. And it's not so much that we can make sure that they get the answers, but what we want to do is just try to make sure that we're finding a way to create an avenue for people who got all of these questions. And I know that we're not the only ones who want to help people get the answers. So if there was 20 more project pieces, it still wouldn't be enough in reference to trying to help everybody. So the idea of trying to really get involved in ways where we feel the community wants us is kind of a luxury for us as a community or as a committee, because we're not 100% hands tied to one specific thing. And now that all these new things have happened as of late last year, I think a lot of people are pivoting in reference to the things that they focus on and how they approach it, because the world has a different look now. I mean, it's just different. I mean, we had a lot of white people who was really for us back in the day to try to stand with us and stuff, but nothing like the amount of white people that's going to be standing now. See, so the tides have changed, and I don't want to say the rooster has come home to crow, whatever these old school sayings is,
The
but
chickens have come
it's
home to
different. The
roost.
chicken, yeah, it's different now. It's definitely different now. So I personally take my hat off to many of the TPD officers that I personally know. It's just that it's still a system that's broke, and they're giving us the ability to push a little bit. So for that, we have to be willing to be patient as a committee, even though many may feel like we should be doing a lot more. We don't want to push to the point where we get pushed off of the agenda and you can't do anything. So kind of helping some of the younger generation to understand it from that perspective as well is good, to have that balance. You need that person that's out there just mad, but you also need the one that has a calmness potentially as well. So we're in a good place where we can try to find a way to appease, a few different perspectives, I think.
And I hope
With
that,
that.
through the work, which you guys are doing great work, we definitely need to be building these relationships with police officers. I just want to remind you guys that it's the work doesn't just fall on our shoulders. This is not our problem. This is a police and a law enforcement accountability issue, So all of the work can't be put on our backs. It doesn't deserve to be put on Project Peace's back for us to find a solution to get the police to stop, wrongfully killing us or just mistreating us. That, and we are being proactive so that we can build or we can try to reconstruct this broken system, right? We can build these relationships, but it's got to go both ways. The police have to do they got to. And I want police around too. I said this before, I continue to say it. I'm a homeowner. I am a Black woman. I need to be protected. But we need equity. We need police to come up to our neighborhoods. We just need to build this trust. And it's not gonna just happen from the community to the police. They gotta do their work too.
Well,
Well, you
I'm sorry, Corwin.
no, no, so
I, I would say that, the TPD, they clearly got a lot of work to do. They got a lot of work to do. But there's a lot of officers in that department that are really trying. I mean, there are, and it's unfortunate that it's not more, maybe. And it's not like I got a head count, but we clearly know that things ain't right because we see it. We don't have, that's not something that I have to bite my tongue on. We know that there are bad apples in every police department. We, I personally don't think that it makes a whole lot of sense to wait to try to change individuals if you are trying to change policies, and you can't put one over the other. There's a lot of things in place that keep officers in a place where they can keep committing the acts that they commit.
Mhm.
And we got to change those laws. We do. But in the meantime, we can also one by one, if we have to, change officers' opinion about how they do their job. And hopefully find some type of space where they are willing to stand up and be the good apple and speak up. Because I think that potentially is one of the tougher things for some of the officers that really want to do the right thing, that they
Mhm.
already know that they're fighting, they're in a system that will not applaud them for speaking up and saying or doing the right thing. So I think that as Project Peace and a lot of these other community members and committees that are in our community, as we shore up our community, but we at the same time work with law enforcement, maybe more and more of them will have a different demeanor towards really being the good apple and speaking up, because if you don't say anything, then you're part of the problem. And they know
You're
What
who,
about active
complicit.
bystanders?
Yeah,
yeah, I
you're
mean,
complicit.
they're part of the
You
problem.
know?
So I think that we're headed in the right direction. And unfortunately, it's like a horse ride. We ain't in a race car. It ain't going fast,
No.
but it's going.
Well, and the system is functioning exactly the way it was set up to function.
Yes.
And when people have relatively lucrative careers, because many of those officers make in excess of $100,000 a year with overtime, when you are in a career, that pays relatively well, has good benefits, um, uh, and if you're not getting shot at every day, which I hope they're not, you're not inclined to change a system that's been maybe good to multiple generations of your family,
Right.
right? It's like,
Right. Yeah.
daddy and granddaddy were in that system, and that system was very, very good to your family, assuming you all survived it and lived to talk about it. We do only have about 5 minutes left, so I want to make sure that we get your reaction to the 21st century policing recommendations. There are a couple things that came out today in their PowerPoint presentation, although the mayor did cut it short because the George Floyd verdict, the Derek Chauvin verdict, was coming down. So she cut the study session short, and rightfully so. But one of the things they talked about is crisis intervention and de-escalation training, that we need to do more of that. We need to be diverting people out of interactions with police. Maybe the new state law 988 is the number now. I think that we're proposing that people would call 988 instead of 911 if they're dealing with a person who is having a mental health crisis or maybe a substance use related crisis. So the state's trying to do some things that may further what the work that you're doing. But is Project Peace reacting in any specific way to these recommendations? Do you have any recommendations of your own that you have tried to get Tacoma Police Department to consider? Or is that not your lane? Is that more the CPAC lane?
well, I will say that I think by having police officers actually on our executive team that does give us a way for to talk to them about things that we think will help in the community. But I definitely want to say, I think when it comes to changes and also in healing, I think we also need to look at that. It's more of an approach of not just what the police did, but also what the court system did as well.
Mm-hmm.
The recent Supreme Court decision of Stade versus Blake has really changed things, changed quite a few things actually. And I think that that is one of the best ways to heal the community. As far as for the policy stuff, I think that we all have great ideas and we present them to the folks that we work with at the Tacoma Police Department. Am I sure if it's being used or followed? I'm not sure. That wasn't really the purpose of Project Peace. But I do think that we are helping the ones that are there to understand what it is that the community needs in order for there to be a bridge built.
Mm-hmm.
And those ways of thinking are changed or added, that the bridge will not well, the bridge may be built, but you'll only have one side coming onto the bridge and the other side will not connect with the other.
Marcus, you want to add to that? Thank you, Corwin. Want to make any final comments before we close with the two of you and Anjane closes the show tonight?
Right. Well, thank you guys for starting for, the invite again. And, in reference to just like the things that could be recommended, the list is so long. the list is too long. I mean, it is too long. I mean, and I think the nice thing that we have as a community, as a committee now in Project Peace is a consensus of people who really are passionate about sticking with it. That is the main thing, the stick to itness, and because the system wants us to get tired.
Mm-hmm.
That's part of it. How tired can we make you,
Mm-hmm.
So getting this young energy in, allowing us to pass the torch so that you guys can work on all of these different things that we have talked about, but you can continue, be it if it's qualified immunity or whatever. There's a whole bunch of stuff that's standing in the way of justice. I think we'll get there because we are making the right moves in a lot of ways as Black people in general to make the changes necessary. And I think the biggest thing that we're doing is bringing in a younger generation of people who don't chase money, they chase change. And that makes the difference,
Yeah.
so yeah.
That to me sounds like the beginning of a good cohort of young people to bring about revolutionary change. So thank you both for leading it, for sticking with it, for staying in there, for hanging in there, for holding on, whatever
Right.
you're doing to stay with
Right.
it.
Right.
And please come back again, maybe bring one or two of your young people with you next time and let us know how it is going. We'll be praying for you all and looking forward to seeing your progress and some reports on your outcomes with the young people.
Right. Well, thank you.
Thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you
both.
guys so much for stopping by.
Thank you.
Okay,
Yes.
see you later.
Night.
All right, Miss Anjane.
All righty, Carol. That was a great interview. I'm so happy that we had Project Peace on today. I mean, really, like they said, they're sticking with it. They're consistent. This work is hard work. It's long and tiresome work, but they're doing just like the IBJ. They realize you have to get the young people involved to, provide that sustainability, that legacy. This is not a fight that's gonna end I hope my lifetime, I hope we get some act right in my lifetime, but this is exactly what we need. And I'm just glad that we actually have people out there in the community working to build relationships, and especially to young people that only have the imagery of, only have negative imagery of police officers right now. And it's getting younger. Like, it's not just 16. Now you're 13 years old, not
Adam
trusting the police.
Toledo was only 13, but now he did have a gun. He was packing, right? But having a gun should not necessarily mean you don't make it home alive that night. A lot
And
of
the
people
whole
carry
reason
guns.
why in Chicago, right? I
Right.
mean,
You're in the south side of Chicago. Then,
everybody's packing guns. That's the culture. And you know who put those guns in those neighborhoods?
hmm.
Let's
Don't
talk
be
about that.
ask me no questions. I will tell you no lies.
Exactly. I mean, we
Yeah.
really got to know our history in the background, but yeah, they are doing some great work. We need our police officers. We just need them to do their job the right way. You know, we need to hold them accountable. I want to just celebrate again that, you know, Derek Chauvin was held accountable today. I pray that all the other officers involved will also be held accountable, because that's just justice. That's just what fairness is. You know, in America, we need to we need to stand to these standards, right? Core principles. This is what it's about.
I think the Minnesota Attorney General said it well today that no man is beneath the law and no man is above the law. And what we need, this is our vision. And he
Mhm.
said it. I said, well, that's confirmation that the IVJ is on to something. He said, we need true justice.
True justice.
That's our vision. True justice,
No
no
exception.
exceptions. So it shouldn't matter if you're in the south side of Chicago or on 96th and Hosmer in Tacoma. It should not matter if you are struggling with some sort of substance use, if your life is upside down because of poverty. Doesn't matter if you live on the east side or the west side. No person is beneath the law and no person's above it. And I think the message today was that the authority and the sovereign immunity that we have given to our police officers has a limit.
It does.
And
And I hope the police.
there's a
Yeah,
point
I
at
hope
which the force, reasonable force, cannot be excessive force. There's a point where the community is saying, you have stepped over the line. And even a 9-year-old child had enough sense to know that Derek Chauvin was over the line. The spectators were calling the police on the police.
Yeah.
Now that's when you know you over the line.
Exactly.
They calling the police on the police.
On the police. Who else you gonna call?
And you wonder why communities of color don't call and don't report a lot of things that happen to them, because interactions with police over a $20 allegedly counterfeit bill ended up in a man losing his life. Cup Foods will never be the same. George Floyd's family will never be the same. Hennepin County will never be the same. And maybe that's, George Floyd is what it took. And, the camera of a 16-year-old who filmed the whole thing, maybe that's what it took.
I hope.
Thank you for being here tonight, beautiful, and part of this dialogue. It's always a pleasure.
Yes, no, thank you, Carol, always. I mean, I live for these Tuesday nights, Thursday premieres of the Black Robe podcast. I mean, we really are creating space for people to share their stories, to share what they're doing in the community, and then for us to reflect. So thank you. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. We got to get out of here because I know y'all got some food to eat. Get some families to be around. So we'll catch you next Thursday.
Yes, we will.